Chosen one, something moved in heaven about 72 hours ago, and it happened because of you. Not because of what you accomplished, not because of what you said out loud, or what anyone in your physical world witnessed. It happened because of a choice you made in a moment so small, so quiet, so completely hidden that no one else on earth knew it occurred. You were alone. The hour was late, or the morning was still dark, and you made a decision that sent a ripple through the unseen realm. God leaned forward. The seraphim fell still, and heaven registered something that is still reverberating right now as you receive this message. You are not here by chance, chosen one. Something greater than coincidence arranged the timing of this exact moment. And what I am about to show you will explain precisely why heaven was stunned by what you did. Stay with me until the very end of this message, because by the time we finish, you will understand exactly what moved in heaven on your behalf, and why the test you have been walking through was never what you thought it was. You will receive a tool that has been prepared specifically for the kind of mind that is formed in your particular season of preparation. And you will leave this space knowing your name, knowing your assignment, and knowing that the God who has been watching you in silence has already sealed the verdict on who you are. The understanding is coming, the tool is waiting, and the activation that closes this message is the reason this word was sent in your direction. Do not leave before the end. What is sealed there belongs to you. Something in you recognized those words before I finished saying them. That is not coincidence. That is the Spirit of the living God confirming what your mind is still trying to catch up to. And I need you to sit with me in this for a moment before we go any further. Picture where you are right now. Maybe you are in a room alone, the screen holding all the light in the space around you. Maybe you are lying down and the ceiling above you is familiar, but the weight in your chest is something that has been sitting there for a long time. Maybe you are somewhere in between, not fully present, not fully absent, existing in that space where the questions about your life feel larger than the answers available to you. That is the place this message was aimed at. Not the version of you that has everything figured out. The version of you who has been faithful in the dark and does not yet know what that faithfulness has been building toward. If you are still, people did. Most people who saw this title kept moving because they are not ready to receive what is contained in it. But you stopped. You stayed. Something in you recognized the weight of what these words are carrying. That recognition is not small. It is the first sign that what is about to be revealed belongs to you. There are 5 things happening in your body and your spirit right now that are not symptoms of weakness. They are not signs of something broken. They are the evidence of a specific kind of formation that only happens in people who have been selected for a particular assignment. And I need to show you what they are, because until you can see them clearly, you will keep mistaking preparation for punishment. The first sign is in the way you sleep, or more accurately, the way you do not sleep. There is a specific pattern that has been repeating in your nights, and it does not have a medical name that satisfies the depth of what is actually happening. You wake at a specific hour. Sometimes it is 3 in the morning, sometimes it is 4, and the waking is not gentle. It is not the slow drift from sleep to consciousness that a rested body experiences. It is something sharper, an alertness that arrives before you have finished deciding to be awake, as if something on the other side of the physical world needed your attention and did not wait for an invitation. You lie there in the dark, and the thoughts that come are not ordinary ones. They do not feel like worry, though you have tried to label them as worry, because that is a category your rational mind can manage. They feel more like receiving, like something is trying to arrive in the space between sleep and waking that cannot get through when the noise of the day is present. Some of you have experienced this for months. Some of you have experienced it for years. You have seen the doctor, The doctor said, "You are fine." You have tried the supplements and the routines and the apps that promise to regulate your sleep. And yet the waking continues, because what is happening in those hours is not a malfunction. It is a frequency. The silence of that hour is the most receptive state your body enters in a 24-hour period. And something has been trying to use that window for a long time. This is not insomnia, chosen one. This is invitation. If you recognize that sign, type 333 inches the comments right now. Not as a ritual and not as a superstition, as a simple declaration that you know what I am talking about. That the night has been speaking to you in a language you have not yet had translated. The second sign lives in your body at a level that goes below tired. You know the difference between regular tiredness and this. Regular tired is what happens after a long day, a demanding week, a season of overwork. It responds to rest. It has a logic to it, a cause and effect that makes sense when you trace it back to its source. What you have been carrying is different. It is a tiredness that rests, but does not lift, a heaviness that shows up even after a good night and a clear morning. People in your life have noticed something in your eyes that they cannot name. You have noticed it in the mirror, not depression, because you are still functioning, still showing up, still pressing forward. But something beneath the surface of your energy has been running on a different kind of fuel for a long time, and the reserves of that fuel have been quietly drawing down. The ancient people had a word for what you are experiencing. They did not call it exhaustion, and they did not call it burnout. They called it the weight of carrying something that was not given to ordinary people. The prophets walked with this weight. The deliverers walked with this weight. The ones who were selected to carry a specific word into a specific generation, they walked under this weight until the weight was revealed to be not a burden, but a calling. What you have been feeling as depletion is actually the physical sensation of something enormous being loaded into you. Your body has been carrying more than it knows. The tiredness is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that you have been chosen for something that requires a different kind of strength than the world provides. The third sign is in the way your emotions have been moving through you lately. There is an unpredictability to them that does not match the external circumstances of your life. You will be in an ordinary moment, doing something unremarkable, and grief will rise in you without a clear target. Or peace will arrive in the middle of something that should be stressful, a peace that does not make sense by any calculation of what is actually happening around you. Or a joy that is too large for the occasion will pass through you and leave you wondering what it was pointing to. And then later there will be a wave of sadness with no name attached to it, a sadness that is not about anything in particular but seems to be about everything at once. These are not mood swings. They are not hormonal imbalances, though the world will try to reduce them to that. They are the emotional consequence of carrying something that has not yet been given language. When a person is being prepared for a significant transition, the spirit begins to process things that the mind has not yet received. Emotions are the first language of the spirit, which means your body is grieving and rejoicing about things your conscious mind will not understand until the next season arrives. The waves are not symptoms of instability. They are evidence of expansion. The fourth sign is in the way your environment has been feeling lately. Spaces and situations and relationships that used to feel neutral now carry a weight that did not used to be there. You have been noticing things you did not used to notice. The energy in a room when you walk into it. The way certain conversations drain you before they have even really begun. The way certain people leave you feeling lighter and other people leave you feeling like you have given something away that you did not consent to give. Your tolerance for things that do not carry substance has been dropping significantly, and this has confused you because it has sometimes looked like withdrawal or antisocial behavior. when from the inside, it has simply felt like the inability to keep pretending that the shallow things are satisfying. This is not cynicism, this is discernment emerging. When a person is entering their season of deployment, the spirit begins to calibrate itself away from what is not aligned with the assignment. The things that drain you are draining you because they are not part of what you are being prepared for. The inability to sustain surface-level engagement is not immaturity. It is the beginning of focus. God is narrowing the lens of your attention. And the narrowing is uncomfortable until you understand what it is for. The fifth sign is one that people rarely talk about because it sounds too strange to name in daylight. But here in this space, among people who know what it means to be chosen, we can name it plainly. You have been seeing the same numbers, the same sequences, in places that should not produce patterns. 3:33 on the clock on the night, you were asking a specific question. 11:11 at the moment a specific person crossed your mind. 4:44 during the hour when the most important thing in your week happened. You have been told this is coincidence. You have told yourself it is coincidence. But part of you knows that the frequency of it, the timing of it, the specificity of it cannot be explained by random number theory. And there is more. There have been moments of knowing before the thing arrived. You said something to someone, and then it happened exactly as you said it. You turned down a road without knowing why, and avoided something you only found out about later. You had a feeling about a person the moment you met them that took 6 months to prove correct. Your intuition has been speaking in a different register lately, louder and more specific than it used to be. These are not coincidences. These are the navigation systems of a life that is being actively guided. If you have been watching this for 15 minutes, I want to say something to you directly. Most people who started this message are no longer with us at this point. They left at minute 6 or minute 9 or somewhere in the middle of a recognition sign that got too close to something they were not ready to look at. But you are still here. And that tells me something important about who you are in this season. You are someone who is willing to stay in the discomfort of being truly seen. That is not nothing. That is the posture of a person who is ready for what comes next. What comes next is something I want to be honest with you about before we go any deeper, because the depth of what I am about to share requires that I first name something real. There is a way that neuroscientists have been studying the specific kind of mind you carry, not metaphorically, but at the level of actual brain function, the kind of mind that was formed in a season like yours. A small group of researchers, led by a doctor in New York who has spent 20 years studying this, they found something about how certain people are wired. Something so foundational and so quietly profound that when you hear it, you will understand why the test you have been walking through was not simply spiritual. It was neurological. It was structural. And what they found changes everything about how you understand what God has been doing in your mind during this preparation. I will show you what they discovered later in this message. But for now, I need you to hold this question. What if the heaviness you have been feeling in your mind, the fog, the feeling of operating below your own potential, what if that was not a flaw? What if it was a theft? And what if the thief is about to be named? Let me stay with the recognition signs for a moment longer, because there is a sixth dimension of what has been happening in your body and your spirit that I want to name before we move forward. It does not fit cleanly into any of the 5 categories I have already described, but it may be the most important signal of all because it points directly at the specific nature of the assignment that your season has been building toward. There has been a sense, persistent and not entirely explainable, that you have a responsibility towards something you cannot yet fully see. Not a responsibility in the sense of an obligation that someone else assigned to you, A responsibility in the sense of an internal knowing that your life is oriented towards something that goes beyond your personal circumstances. That the things happening in your life, even the difficult things, are not just your own private story. They belong to a larger story. That there are people you have not yet met who are in some way connected to the specific shape of what your life has been building toward. That what you carry, the combination of pain and wisdom and formation and character that your season has produced, is not just for you, it is for them. This sense does not always have a name when it arrives. Sometimes it arrives as a restlessness that nothing in your current circumstances can fully resolve. A feeling that there is more, not in the sense of dissatisfaction with what you have, but in the sense of incompleteness until the thing you were made for is found and engaged. Sometimes it arrives as a weight that has no clear target, the weight of caring about people and things that are not yet in your immediate sphere. Sometimes it arrives as a vision, not necessarily a visual one, but a strong internal impression of a different version of your life that feels more true to who you actually are than the version you are currently inhabiting. That sense is not imagination. It is the internal compass of a person who has been selected for something. The compass does not always point directly at the destination because the destination is not always reachable in a straight line. But it points in the direction of the destination, and the direction, followed faithfully in the conditions of your specific circumstances, will get you to the destination. The directional knowing is enough. The exact map is not required. The compass and the next right step are sufficient for the journey you are on. You do not need to perform the sense of calling. You do not need to announce it or prove it or build a case for why it is real. The sense itself is the evidence. The persistence of it across the years of your formation, the way it survived the pressures that would have extinguished it if it were a manufactured thing, the way it gets stronger rather than weaker as you get closer to the threshold you are now standing on, all of that is the evidence. The calling is real. And the character that was built in your season is now aligned with the calling in a way that it was not fully aligned when the season began. You are more ready than you have ever been for the thing that is coming. The people who will be impacted by your life in the next season are already existing somewhere in the world right now. They have their own stories, their own seasons, their own wilderness moments, their own doubts about whether any of this means anything, and they need what you have been formed to carry, not what you have achieved, not what you can demonstrate, what you have been formed to carry. The wisdom from the inside of the fire. The testimony of someone who held on when holding on had no visible reward. The presence of someone who came out of the furnace not smelling of smoke. That is what they need. And you are the one who has it to give. This is why the enemy invested so heavily in the strategy of making your season feel like abandonment. Not because he was afraid of what you would accomplish, but because he was afraid of what you would carry out of the season and give to the people who would be changed by receiving it. The strategy was never just about stopping you. It was about stopping the ripple. The ripple that starts with your formation and extends through the lives of every person who encounters what was formed in you and who discovers through that encounter that their own formation season means something. You are not just the person the formation was for. You are the person the formation was for, plus everyone who will ever be reached by what the formation put in you. The enemy did the math. He understood the scope of the ripple, and he was wrong about whether the root would hold. There is a man in the sacred text whose name means he will add. He was the 11th of 12 brothers, favored by his father in a way that made him a target. And the target found him at the bottom of a pit in the Judean wilderness before it found him in the depths of a foreign prison. Joseph did not enter his assignment through a front door. He entered it through a series of violations so specific, so comprehensive, that if you had mapped them at the time, you would have concluded the map was leading nowhere good. His brothers stripped him. His employers falsely accused him. The cupbearer who promised to remember him forgot him for 2 years. Layer upon layer of betrayal, each one designed to erase the dream that God had planted in him. But here is what the text records that most people read past. While Joseph was in prison, God was with him, not watching from a distance, not monitoring a difficult situation from a position of concern. With him, present in the prison in a way that was so tangible that the warden gave Joseph responsibility over the entire facility. The favor of God did not disappear when the circumstances of Joseph collapsed. It relocated. It found him in the pit. It found him in the prison. It was not deterred by what the enemy used to try to stop the dream from reaching its destination. In the ancient Hebrew, there is a word that the text uses to describe the way God was watching Joseph in that season. The word is tsafa. It is a word that carries an intensity of attention that the English word watching does not fully hold. Tsafa means to lean forward intently. It means to watch with the posture of someone who is not willing to miss a single detail. It is the word used for a watchman on a city wall who cannot afford to let his gaze drift because the thing he is watching for is too important. When the text describes God as Tsafa over Joseph in that prison, it is not describing a casual divine observation. It is describing a God who was leaning in with the full weight of heaven oriented in one direction, toward one man, in one cell, in one moment, that looked like the end of everything. Chosen one, that same word describes what has been happening over your life in this season. The season that has looked like delay, the season that has felt like abandonment, the season where you have done everything you knew to do and the outcomes have not arrived in the forms you expected. God has been Tsafa over your life. During this time, He has been leaning forward. He has not been averting His gaze. The prison that you thought separated you from your promise has been the exact location where the preparation was happening that could not have happened anywhere else. The formation in the pit was not a deviation from the plan, it was the plan. And what was being formed in Joseph in those hidden years was something that no palace education could have produced. A patience that could not be manufactured. A perspective that could only come from the bottom. A character that would not have been trustworthy with the elevation that was coming if it had not first been proven in the reduction that preceded it. What looks like your lowest point from the outside is the highest density location for what God is building into you. Hold that. Let it settle into the part of you that has been wondering whether any of this means anything. Because what I am about to show you in the revelation that follows is going to answer the question that has been behind every other question you have been asking. The question is not whether you passed the test. You did. The question is what the test was actually testing for, and that answer will stun you. Before we enter the first revelation, I need to give you what I promised. Not the answer, not yet, but the context that makes the answer make sense, because the test you have been in has a name, and the name will not mean anything until I show you what it was designed to measure in you that nothing else could measure. Think about the last season of your life, not weeks, months, possibly years. Think about the specific contours of it, the things you prayed for that did not arrive in the form you asked for them, the doors that opened and then closed, the relationships that seemed aligned and then dissolved in ways you could not explain, the opportunities that emerged and disappeared, the sense that you were doing everything right and the outcomes were not cooperating with the faithfulness you were bringing to the process. Most people who have been in that kind of season tell me the same thing when they describe it. They say, it felt like God was not listening, or like they were being punished for something they could not identify, or like the universe had miscalculated somehow and their life was the mistake that fell through the cracks. They were faithful and the breakthrough was not coming. They were trusting and the evidence of that trust was not manifesting. They were holding on, and the thing they were holding on to kept feeling farther away. If that is the language of your last season, you are in exactly the right place for what is about to be revealed to you. Because that feeling, that specific combination of faithfulness without visible return, trust without tangible evidence, endurance without applause, is not the description of a person who is being overlooked. It is the description of a person who is being tested at the deepest level. And the depth of the test corresponds directly to the magnitude of what has been designated for the other side of it. Let me tell you something about how testing works in the economy of God that most teaching does not explain. The tests that are visible, the ones with clear stakes and clear outcomes, those are the ones that build confidence. They are important, but they are not the tests that build the kind of character that can sustain an elevated assignment. The tests that build that character are the invisible ones, the tests where no one is watching. The tests where the cost is real but the credit is not coming. The tests where the right choice looks indistinguishable from the wrong choice to every observer. Those tests do not build confidence. They build something older and more durable than confidence. They build integrity in its purest form, the version of you that does the right thing when no one will ever know whether you did it. Abraham understood this in a way that his biography almost fails to capture. The man had waited decades for the child he was promised. He had believed when the biology said it was impossible. He had held the word of God over a situation that every rational indicator said was already over. He had waited through seasons that would have broken most people, and he had held his position. And then the child arrived. The child who was the embodiment of every promise, the walking, breathing, laughing evidence that God keeps what he says. And then the instruction came that Abraham could not have anticipated and could not have been prepared for by anything that preceded it. Take your son, your only son, the one you love, and go to the mountain. Most of the time when we read that account, we focus on what Abraham was being asked to give up, the sacrifice, the cost, the impossibility of the instruction. But the rabbinical tradition asks a different question. Why the mountain? Why Moriah specifically? And the answer is in the name. Moriah, in the ancient Hebrew, carries the root of the word for vision, the place where God will be seen. Abraham was not just being tested on his willingness to obey. He was being tested on whether he could trust a God he could not see, to provide in a place he could not yet reach with his understanding. The instruction was taking him to the place where vision happens, but he had to walk up the mountain in the dark to get there. What God was watching for in Abraham on that mountain was not perfection. It was not performance. It was the willingness to trust the nature of God when the instructions of God made no sense to the human mind. That is tzapah, chosen one. That is God leaning in with the full intensity of heaven to watch whether the person he has prepared will trust him in the moment, when trust costs everything and guarantees nothing visible in return. Abraham passed that test, and the word that came back from heaven when he did was not well done. It was not congratulations. The word that came back was now I know. Now I know that you fear God. Now I know what is in you. The test was not a punishment, and it was not cruelty. It was the moment when what was already in Abraham was finally visible to the testimony of heaven. The character that had been built over decades of waiting was finally demonstrated in a way that could be declared. Now I know. And at the other side of that now I know was a provision that had already been prepared, but could not be released until the character of the one it was being released to had been confirmed. The ram in the thicket was there before Abraham arrived on the mountain. The provision existed before the test. The blessing was already designated before the trial began. The test was not about whether God would provide. The test was about whether Abraham was ready to receive what was already waiting for him on the other side of his obedience. Chosen one, there is a ram in your thicket. There is a provision already prepared and already designated that cannot be released yet because the test is not finished yet. But I need to tell you something that I think you need to hear before we go into what God saw on your behalf. What I'm about to say will require you to stay with me through the next section without shutting down, because it is going to feel personal in a way that might bring some emotion to the surface. And that emotion is not something to push away, it is something to receive, because what is coming is not information, it is restoration. Before we leave what the ancient text tells us about the mechanics of preparation, I want to spend one more moment in the original language, because the word chosen for how God describes the watching over those he has prepared carries a meaning that the English translation does not fully carry. When the psalmist wrote that God neither slumbers nor sleeps while he keeps watch over his people, the word used is shamar. Shamar means to guard, to keep, to protect with active attention. But there is a second layer to safar that shamar does not have. Safar implies not just protection, but anticipation. The watchman who uses safar is not just guarding, he is straining forward to catch the first sign of what is coming. God has not just been watching over you in this season, he has been leaning forward to see what you would do, watching for the moment when the depth of what he has placed in you would be confirmed. And the moment came, not on the public stage, not in the place where the witnesses were assembled, in the private moment, in the hidden choice, in the decision you made alone when the cost was real and the reward was nowhere visible. That is the moment heaven registered. That is the moment that sent the ripple. That is the moment God leaned in. And what he saw when he leaned in is what has already been moving into position on your behalf in the unseen realm. You have been faithful in the dark, chosen one. And the God who sees in secret is the God who rewards openly. The reward is not withheld. The reward is in preparation. And what it looks like on the other side of this revelation is going to change the way you understand everything that has been happening around you for the past season of your life. Beneath the surface of every test, there lives a question that the test is actually asking. Not the question you see on the surface, not the question the circumstances seem to be posing. A deeper question, one that only becomes visible when you look at the test from the perspective of the one who designed it, rather than the one who is walking through it. The question the test you have been in was actually asking is not the question you think it was. And understanding what it was actually testing for will change the way you see everything that has happened to you over the last season of your life. Most people, when they are in a difficult season, frame the test as a question about outcomes. They think the test is asking whether they will get the job, keep the relationship, recover the health, rebuild the finances. They measure their passage or failure by whether the thing they were holding on for actually arrives. If it arrives, they passed. If it does not, they failed. And this framework, while understandable, completely misses the nature of what God is doing in a season of testing. Because if the test were about outcomes, then the faithfulness of the person being tested would be irrelevant. The outcome would simply be a matter of whether God decided to deliver or not. And that is not a test, that is a lottery. The test was never about what you lost. The test was never about whether the thing you were trusting for would arrive. The test was about something far more fundamental and far more revealing than any external outcome. The test was about whether you would trust the nature of God when the evidence of his character was invisible to you, not when you could see his hand moving, not when the manifestations were appearing in your experience, when the silence was the only sound, and the delay was the only feedback, and the wilderness was the only landscape available. Could you trust a God you could not see, in a season where his presence was not confirmed by anything your senses could access? That is the deeper question. That is what Sapphire was watching for. Not whether you would be perfect, not whether you would never doubt, not whether you would smile through the pain and perform faithfulness for an audience. The question was whether, in your most private and unwitnessed moments, when the cost of trusting was highest and the reward was furthest from view, you would still choose to believe. Not because the evidence compelled you to, not because you felt his presence, simply because you had decided at some level that the character of God was trustworthy, even when his actions were incomprehensible. What felt like abandonment was actually appointment. What felt like delay was actually development. What felt like silence was actually the sound of something enormous being prepared. What felt like your prayers falling into empty space was actually those prayers building something in the unseen realm that you have not been given eyes to see yet. What felt like you being forgotten was actually you being protected from a version of the answer that would not have been able to hold what God was intending to place in it. What felt like your faith failing was actually your faith being purified at a temperature that removes everything that is not faith at all, leaving behind something truer and more durable than what you started with. If something in you just recognized that, if your chest just did something when I said those words, type "I see it" in the comments right now. Because what you felt in that moment is the Spirit of God, confirming what your mind has been trying to accept for a long time. The season you are coming out of was not a punishment, it was a purification. And what has been purified is now ready to be placed in the service of something it could not have handled before the fire. Before I show you the next layer of revelation, I want to pause here and send something toward you, because you have been sitting with this message for a while now, and I am aware that some of what I have been saying has been landing in places that have been tender for a long time. If this word is bringing something to the surface, whether that is grief or relief, or something that does not quite have a name, that is not a malfunction. That is the evidence of a word that is penetrating to the places that needed to be reached. Let it do its work. You do not need to manage it or contain it or make sure it looks appropriate. Let what needs to rise, rise. And let what needs to settle, settle. You are safe in this space. What is arriving for you is good, even when the arrival process is not comfortable. And if you have stayed through these first 30 minutes of this message, do something for me right now. Not for me, and not for a number somewhere. Do something for the person in your life who is going through what you have been going through and has not yet found the language for it. Press the like button, not because it helps a channel, because it sends this word into the path of someone else who is in a similar darkness and needs to know what you are learning right now. Your agreement with this message is a seed that goes further than you can see from where you are standing. Plant it now. Now let me show you something that Joseph understood in the prison that changed the entire trajectory of what he was being prepared for. The text records that during the years in prison, Joseph interpreted dreams, not his own. The dreams of the men around him, the cupbearer and the baker, two men whose futures were sealed in their dreams and who had no one to decode what they were receiving. And Joseph, who had his own unfulfilled dream, sitting incomplete in the treasury of his own spirit, took the time to attend to the dreams of others while his own remained unrealized. Think about what that reveals about what the prison years were doing in Joseph. A lesser version of Joseph, a Joseph who had not been purified by the pit and the prison, might have been too consumed by the injustice of his own situation to have the capacity to attend to someone else. The unfulfilled dream might have curdled into bitterness. The delayed promise might have produced an inward turn that made him inaccessible to the very connections that would eventually lead to his release. But instead, in the middle of his own unanswered questions, Joseph turned outward. He asked the men why they were troubled. He made himself available to carry the burden of someone else while his own remained unresolved. That is the character that only gets built in the season you have been in. Not in the palace, not in the prosperity, in the prison. The prison does not just test patience. The prison builds a specific kind of generosity that can only be formed in people who have learned to trust a God who has not yet delivered on what they were promised. Because if Joseph had been released from the prison before the character was formed, he would have arrived in the palace as someone with power, but without the depth of character to use it well. The timing of the release was not about God being stingy with the blessing. It was about God protecting Joseph from a version of the elevation that Joseph, at year 1 of the prison, could not have survived intact. Here is what I need you to receive. The delay in your breakthrough was not a withholding, it was a protection. God was not keeping the good thing from you because you had not earned it or because you did not deserve it. God was keeping the good thing from you because you, at the beginning of this season, were not yet the version of yourself who could steward what is coming without losing yourself in it. The formation in the prison was the gift. The waiting was the preparation. The test was the mercy. And the verdict that has already been sealed over your life by what God has seen in you in your most hidden and unwitnessed moments is this. Now he knows. Now heaven has seen what you are made of when the audience has gone home and the outcomes have not arrived, and the cost of faithfulness is being paid in the currency of your private life. Now the character has been confirmed at a level that makes the release not just possible but safe. You passed, chosen one, not perfectly, not without tears, and not without moments of doubt, but you passed. And the passing was not a performance. It was a revelation of what was already in you. There is something in the Greek language that clarifies what it means to pass a test in the economy of God that I want to give you now, because it will shift the way you understand what has been accomplished in this season. The word is dokimos. It appears in the letter to the Romans, and in the second letter to the Corinthians, and in the letter to Timothy. Translated into English, it is usually rendered approved. But the word carries a far more specific meaning than approval in the general sense. Dokimos is the word used for metal that has been through the refining fire and come out the other side without impurities. In the ancient world, a metal that was dokimos was a metal that had been tested and confirmed as genuine, not just good metal, verified metal. Metal that had earned the designation of trustworthy through a process that could not be faked or skipped. When Paul writes about the person who has been tested and approved, he is using a word that would have made every reader of his letters think of the metalworkers and the refiners who were part of daily commercial life. They knew exactly what it meant for something to be dokimos. It meant it had been in the fire. It meant the fire had done its work. It meant what remained after the fire was real, in a way that had now been confirmed by something the fire itself had verified. You are dokimos, chosen one. The season you have been in has been the fire. And what has remained, the faith, the faithfulness, the quiet endurance, the willingness to keep trusting in the silence, what has remained is the real thing. Heaven has confirmed it. There is a second word I want to give you that carries the other half of what has been accomplished in your season. The word is teleoio. It appears in the letter to the Hebrews, in the chapter that lists the great heroes of faith by name. Translated into English, it means brought to completion, made whole, brought to the fullness of what was intended at the beginning. When the text describes Jesus himself as being teleo through suffering, It is not suggesting that he was deficient before the suffering. It is describing a process by which something that was present from the beginning was brought to its fullest expression through a specific journey, not improved, fulfilled. The suffering did not add something that was missing. It brought out what was already there in its complete form. Your season has been a season of teleio, not a season where something was wrong with you that needed to be fixed. A season where something was present in you that needed to be brought to its fullest expression before it could be released into the assignment it was designed for. What has been happening to you has not been corrective. It has been completion, and the completion is why you are here right now, at this specific moment, receiving what you are receiving. Because you are complete enough now for what is about to be released into your life to land safely, you are dokimos, you are teleo, and the God who has been leaning forward over your life in the posture of Jasava is about to show you what he saw. There is a perspective that is available to God in the middle of any situation that is not available to anyone who is inside the situation. The perspective of what the situation is actually producing, not what it looks like from the inside, from inside the pressure, inside the waiting, inside the cost. The perspective from the vantage point of what is being accomplished at a level that the person going through it does not have access to yet. When God was watching Joseph in the prison, he was not watching a failed dream. He was watching a dream being formed into something that could survive the weight of its own fulfillment. He was watching a boy being built into a man who would one day hold the fate of a nation in his hands. The prison looked like a tomb from the inside. From outside the temporal frame, it looked like a university. What God saw while he was watching you in your season was not what you saw. You saw the closed door. You saw the unanswered prayer. You saw the delayed blessing and the unrealized dream and the promise that was still pending. You saw the cost of faithfulness without the corresponding evidence of reward. You saw the people around you moving forward while your timeline seemed frozen. You saw the questions multiplying and the answers not arriving. You saw, in your most honest moments, the distance between what you believed and what you were experiencing, and you made the choice, over and over, in the privacy of your own heart, to keep believing anyway. That is what you saw. What God saw was different. From his vantage point, here is what was visible during your season. Every morning you chose to rise and orient yourself toward him again, not because the circumstances had changed, but because something in you had decided that his character was reliable even when his timing was mysterious. God saw a deposit being made into your spiritual account that could not be made any other way. Every time you kept your mouth quiet, when you could have spoken bitterness, when you had the material and the audience and the legitimate grievance, when you stayed silent and let God be the one to speak on your behalf, God saw something being placed in you that no palace education and no fast-tracked season of blessing could have installed. Every time you showed up in the lives of people around you and continued to be available, continued to be generous, continued to carry their burdens while your own remained unresolved, God saw the generosity of Joseph being formed in you at the cellular level. The contrast between what you saw and what God saw is worth sitting with for an extended moment. Because the habit of seeing your season through your own eyes, through the lens of what was visible from the inside of the difficulty, is one of the most persistent challenges of a formation season. It is natural. It is almost unavoidable. When you are in the fire is what you can see. The refinement that the fire is producing in the material that is being refined is not visible to the material while it is in the fire. It is visible to the one holding the crucible. It is visible to the one who knows what impurities need to be removed and what remains when they are removed. And it is visible in retrospect when the material comes out of the fire and the observer can compare what went in with what came out. You went into your season carrying certain things that were not the real you, but that felt like the real you, because you had been carrying them long enough that they had become familiar. Fear masquerading as caution. Performance masquerading as confidence. The need for external validation masquerading as relational connection. The compulsive control of circumstances masquerading as responsible stewardship. These things were not your identity, but they were attached to your identity in ways that were close enough to the real thing to be difficult to distinguish from the inside. The fire was not punishing you for having them. The fire was separating them from what they were attached to, so that what remained when the fire was done would be the real thing, unencumbered by what was not real. What God saw in your season was not a list of what you were lacking. What God saw was the process of the removal of what was not you and the strengthening of what was. Every moment in your season that felt like you were losing ground was a moment in which something that was not your actual foundation was being identified and removed. The removal felt like loss because it looked like loss. A relationship that was not genuinely supportive of your assignment felt like a loss when it ended. But what ended was not the relationship. What ended was the demand that relationship was making on the part of you that was not able to grow in the presence of that demand. The ending was the pruning. The pruning is how the fruit comes. He did not see someone falling behind. He saw someone being made ready. He did not see someone being punished. He saw someone being protected from a version of the blessing that would have exposed what was not yet ready in them. He did not see a promise broken. He saw a promise being carefully constructed, stone by stone, in the specific sequence that would make the finished structure able to hold what was being placed in it. Every piece of what you were walking through that looked like loss from the inside was a deposit from his perspective. Not a withdrawal, a deposit. I hear the Father saying to you in this moment, I see every day of it. Every night you cried when you were alone. Every morning you woke up and chose to believe again, even though nothing in your external world gave you a reason to. Every conversation you had with me in the dark, when you did not know if I was listening, I heard all of them. I was there for all of them. I did not miss a single moment. And what was being built in you in those moments is something I have been preparing for a very long time. You have not been invisible to me. You have been the primary focus of my attention. That is the voice of the Father over your life right now. Not the voice of disappointment, not the voice of examination. The voice of a father who has been watching his child from a position of full knowledge and full love and full intentionality, and who is now ready to tell that child what he has seen. And what he has seen is not lack, not weakness, not failure. What he has seen is someone who was selected for a specific assignment and who has proven, in the furnace of an invisible and unwitnessed season, that they can be trusted with what has been designated for them. The comparison trap is one of the most effective tools that can be used against a person in their season of formation. Because when you are in a season where the external outcomes are not cooperating with your faithfulness, the natural response is to look at the external outcomes of people around you who seem to be moving forward. And the comparison, when it is experienced through the filter of a season of struggle, does not feel neutral. It feels like evidence that they have something you do not have, that they are in favor and you are not, that they are blessed and you have been missed. And this filter, applied consistently over the length of a difficult season, can begin to erode the very foundation that the season was designed to build. What God was protecting you from by keeping your formation private was not exposure. He was protecting the formation itself from the contamination of the wrong measuring stick. The comparisons that look devastating are devastatingly inaccurate. You are not on the same timeline as the person whose highlight you are observing. You are not in the same assignment. You are not being prepared for the same weight of responsibility. The schedule that your season is running on is calibrated not to the pace of anyone else, but to the specific requirements of what you are being prepared to carry. And the specific requirements of what you are being prepared to carry required exactly this length, exactly this depth, exactly this specific combination of losses and endurances and private choices that formed what could not have been formed any other way. The comparison is false, not because the people you are comparing yourself to are less favored, but because the comparison assumes a metric that does not apply to your situation. You are allowed to stop measuring yourself against the timeline of someone whose assignment is different from yours. You are allowed to stop interpreting their progress as evidence of your stagnation. You are allowed to understand that what looks like you being behind is actually you being prepared for something that requires a longer runway. You are allowed to release the pressure of a pace that was never meant for the weight you are carrying. And you are allowed to receive what I am about to tell you without filtering it through the lens of what you have not yet received. Because what you have not yet received is not evidence that you have been overlooked. It is evidence that what is coming is being held at a level of preparation that matches the level of investment that God has made in you. The provision is not absent. The provision is in preparation, and the preparation was the season you have been in. The season is not still going. The season has already changed. The verdict has already been sealed. And what is coming from the direction of a God who has been Sapphire over every moment of your formation, and who is now ready to move from watching to releasing. Let me show you one more layer of what was happening in your season before we enter the revelation that changes everything. Because there is a dimension of what God saw during your test that most teaching about testing leaves out, and leaving it out produces an incomplete picture that leads to an incomplete freedom. The dimension I want to show you is not about what you did right. It is about what the enemy was attempting to do with what you were walking through, and how what you did in the private moments of your season dismantled a strategy that was aimed directly at your assignment. In the ancient text, there is a moment in the story of Job, a man whose suffering was comprehensive in a way that most human suffering does not reach, where the curtain is pulled back and the reader is given access to a conversation that Job himself could not hear. A conversation between God and the adversary. And in that conversation, the adversary makes a specific argument about Job that is worth examining carefully, because the same argument is almost certainly the one being made about you. The argument is this: Job only trusts you because you have protected him. Remove the protection, and he will abandon the trust. The faithfulness is contingent on the blessing. The loyalty is purchased by the safety. Take away the safety, and you will see what his devotion is actually made of. That argument is the framework for the testing that followed, not random suffering. Targeted pressure at the specific points that the adversary calculated would reveal that the faithfulness was purchased rather than genuine. The children, the health, the wealth, the reputation, the community of friends, everything that could be used to argue that Job trusted God because of what God provided, rather than because of who God was. And Job, who did not have access to the conversation that had taken place about him, and who had no way of knowing why his world was collapsing, sat in the middle of it and refused to let go of the God he could not see. Not perfectly. The book is full of his wrestling, his questions, his profound and legitimate grief, but the fundamental orientation of his heart did not move. He would not curse God. The adversary lost the argument, not because Job was made of better material than ordinary humans, but because the faithfulness that was under examination turned out to be rooted in something that the removal of blessings could not extract. Job loved God for God. Not for the outcomes, not for the provision, not for the safety. The love was for the person of God, and the season of suffering proved it in a way that no season of prosperity could ever prove it. Prosperity proves that you can be faithful when it costs nothing. Adversity proves something different. It proves that the faithfulness is not contingent on the reward. And now I hear you asking, because the question is in you whether you have voiced it or not, what was the test actually for? If God already knew what was in Job, why did the testing need to happen? The answer is in the word testimony. God knew, but the testimony of what was in Job needed to be established in the record of the seen world. The test was not for God to find out what Job was made of. God already knew. The test was so that the testimony of what Job was made of would be recorded at a level that would outlast his lifetime and become the inheritance of everyone who came after him, and needed to know that faithfulness in incomprehensible suffering was possible. Job passed the test not just for himself, he passed it for you. His faithfulness became a word that found you in your season and told you that it was possible to endure what seemed unendurable and come out on the other side with your trust intact. Your season, chosen one, is also a testimony, not just yours. It belongs to the people who will come after you and who will need to know from your life that it is possible to trust God in the wilderness and emerge with the promise intact. The test you have been in has been building something that outlasts you, and the verdict that has been sealed over your life is not just for your benefit. It is for the benefit of everyone who will encounter what God has been building in you over the course of this formation. The passing is not just personal. The passing is a deposit into a treasury that will make provision for generations. What you did in the secret place is about to become visible in a way that will astonish you, and the astonishment of what is coming is the reason this message found you at this specific moment. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you in the third revelation is the piece that most teaching about testing never reaches. The piece that explains not just what was being tested and what was being formed, but what specific moment in your season made heaven lean forward with the intensity that changed the atmosphere around your life. And that moment, when you understand it, will be the most surprising thing you have learned about yourself in a very long time. The test had a name, not a number, not a category. A specific name that was given to it in the language of the ancient text. And when you hear the name, you will recognize it, because the name describes exactly what you have been living for the duration of your season. The name of the test is surrender without resolution. It is the test that asks a person to release an outcome they have been holding with everything they have, without being given a guarantee of what the release will produce, without being shown the other side of the surrender before the surrender is required. It is the highest difficulty level of trust, not because it requires the most effort, but because it requires the complete abandonment of the one thing that human effort always defaults to in moments of spiritual pressure. The need to know how this ends. Every other test has a shape that the human mind can negotiate with. The test of patience asks whether you can wait, and waiting has a logic to it. There is a beginning and there is an end. The test of integrity asks whether you will do the right thing when it costs something. And integrity has a framework. There is a right and a wrong, and the choice between them is at least comprehensible, even when it is difficult. The test of generosity asks whether you will give when giving is expensive, and generosity has a calculation. Give this and receive that, not necessarily in kind, and not necessarily immediately, but the economy of generosity is at least coherent. Surrender without resolution has none of those shapes. It asks you to let go of the specific outcome you have been orienting your life around, not because you have received a better outcome in exchange, not because the original desire was wrong, not because the cost of holding on has become too high, but simply because God is asking you to place your hand flat on the table and release what you are holding, with no guarantee about what happens next, with no clarity about whether the thing you are releasing will be given back, with nothing but the character of God as the foundation for the trust the release requires. That is the test Abraham was on the mountain, not the test of whether he would give up his son, the test of whether he trusted the God who had given him the son enough to place the son back in the hands of the God who had given him. The test was not about Isaac. The test was about whether Abraham believed that the God who had made the promise was capable of keeping the promise through means that Abraham could not control and had not been told about in advance. Could he trust a God who made promises and then asked him to release the method by which he expected the promise to be fulfilled? That is the test you have been in, not the test of whether you would keep doing the right things. You have been doing the right things, not the test of whether you would maintain the external disciplines of faithfulness. You have maintained them. The test of surrender without resolution was asking something different. It was asking whether you would be willing to place the specific version of the answer you had been holding, the timeline you had been working toward, the particular form in which you expected the breakthrough to arrive, whether you would be willing to release that specific version and trust that the God who holds the promise is not limited to the delivery method you had imagined. And here is what happened in the moment that moved heaven. Here is the specific thing you did in the private and unwitnessed space of your own spirit that sent the ripple that you were told about at the beginning of this message. You let it go. Not perfectly, not without grief, not in a single moment of dramatic release that felt clean and triumphant, but in some private moment, in some conversation you had with God that no one else was present for. You opened your hand. You released the specific version of the outcome you had been gripping. You said, in whatever language the Spirit uses when words are not enough, that you trusted Him even in this. Even with this, even if this never resolves in the way you have been asking it to, you will still trust Him. You will still choose Him. You will still believe that He is good, even if the evidence for His goodness in your current circumstances is something you have to hold by faith rather than by sight. That moment made heaven pause, not because God did not already know it was in you. He knew. Tafar had been watching it build in you across the entire season. But in that moment it became testimony. It became record. It became the thing that was spoken in the courts of heaven as proof of what this person is made of. Now we know. And now we know changes everything about what is designated for the other side of the release. Because the release was not just an act of obedience, it was a demonstration that the character needed to carry the promise had been fully formed. The ram was already in the thicket. The provision was already prepared. The release was the signal that the one for whom the provision was designated had become the version of themselves who could receive it without losing themselves in it. Type Amen in the comments right now if you understand what I am saying. Not as a ritual, as a declaration, as your agreement with the verdict that has been sealed over your life by what you did in the hidden place. You passed, and the passing was not a performance. It was the revelation of a character that was already there, waiting to be confirmed at the temperature of surrender without resolution. I want to give you something now that is practical, because the revelation of what has been happening spiritually is not enough on its own. The spirit and the practical are not opposites, they are partners. And what I am about to give you are 3 practices that align your daily life with the revelation you have just received. Not 3 things to add to your schedule as additional burdens, 3 orientations that shift the way you engage with the reality of the formation that is still in process, even as the test has been confirmed and the verdict has been sealed. The first practice is what I call the unwitnessed faithfulness practice. It is grounded in the specific dynamic that was most visible in your season and most powerful in the passing of your test. The private choice. The decision no one saw. The act of integrity or generosity or trust that happened in the space between you and God with no audience and no credit. What made your test significant was precisely what made it invisible. And the practice is this: once a day, every day for the next 30 days, choose one act of faithfulness that will not be witnessed by anyone. Not an act of grand sacrifice, not a performance of spirituality, a small, specific choice that you make in a private moment that costs you something real that no one will ever know you made. Pay a debt that you could have gotten away with not paying. Say the honest thing in a situation where the dishonest thing would have passed undetected. Choose patience in the moment when impatience would have been invisible to everyone except you. The practice is not about accumulating spiritual credit. It is about training the disposition that your test revealed. The disposition that chooses God and chooses right and chooses trust when there is no audience to perform it for. That disposition was what the season was building in you. The practice deepens it. The deepening prepares you for the level of responsibility that is coming. Because what is coming will require someone who can be trusted not just when the witnesses are present, but when the only one watching is the God who has been Tsafar over your life since before your season began. The second practice is what I call designated silence, not the absence of words. Designated silence is a specific decision to make 15 minutes of every day unavailable to input and available only to reception. Not sleep, not passive rest. Active, intentional silence in which you are positioning yourself to receive what is coming before it arrives in visible form. The language of God in the season of preparation is often not words. It is impressions, shifts, the quiet arrival of a clarity that was not there 15 minutes ago, a perspective on a situation that entered during the silence and changed the way you see the situation completely. Most people who are in a season of formation are too filled with information and input to hear the frequency on which what is coming is being broadcast. The noise of the world, the constant availability to content and conversation and distraction is not neutral. It fills the space where the signal lives. Designated silence is the practice of clearing that space on purpose, deliberately, daily, not because God cannot speak through the noise, but because you are choosing to honor the relationship between you and the one who is preparing you by making yourself deliberately available in a form that costs you something. Silence costs you control. It costs you the comfortable distraction of knowing what is happening in the world around you during those 15 minutes. The cost of the silence is what makes it a practice rather than an accident. And the practice, repeated daily, creates a receptivity that becomes one of the most powerful tools in your formation. There is something about the practice of designated silence that I want to deepen before we move to the third practice. Because silence is one of the most misunderstood spiritual disciplines in the tradition, and the misunderstanding tends to produce either guilt for those who cannot sustain it, or disappointment for those who practice it and do not immediately experience what they expected. The misunderstanding is rooted in what silence is expected to produce. Most people approach silence as a technique for hearing God speak, and God does sometimes speak in silence. But that framing places the expectation on a specific kind of output, a word or an impression or a clear sense of direction. And when the output does not arrive in the expected form within the expected time frame, the silence feels like it failed to produce what it was supposed to produce. Designated silence is not primarily a technique for receiving specific communications. It is a practice for developing the quality of interior attention that makes you capable of recognizing the way God speaks in the full range of forms that his communication takes, not just in the dramatic and unmistakable form of the word that arrives like thunder. The quality of attention that is developed in silence is what allows you to notice the quieter forms of his presence and direction. The door that opens when you are facing the right direction. The person who arrives at the specific moment when their arrival is the exact thing that was needed. The impression, during an ordinary moment, that redirects the next decision in a way that only makes sense several steps later. These are the forms of divine communication that are most common and most reliable, and that most people miss because their interior attention is too noisy to catch the quieter signal. 15 minutes a day of designated silence will not immediately produce dramatic revelations. What it will produce, over time, is the development of an interior quietness that begins to carry into the rest of the day. The quietness does not eliminate the noise of the world, but it creates a space within you that is not occupied by the noise, a space that can notice things the noise prevents you from noticing, a space that can receive the quieter communications that have been arriving all along, but that were inaudible above the ambient volume of a life that has not made deliberate room for the frequency on which they were being broadcast. In the ancient tradition, the practice was called the practice of presence. Not presence in the sense of mindfulness as it is currently discussed, though there are overlaps. Presence in the sense of an intentional orientation of the whole self, the thinking mind, the feeling body, the spirit beneath both, toward the reality of God in the moment. Not the idea of God, not the theology of God, the present tense. Here and now reality of a God who is not distant and not theoretical, but who is in the specific room with you, in the specific hour of your specific day, and who has things to communicate that require a specific quality of your attention to receive. The 15 minutes of designated silence is the daily practice of developing that quality of attention until it becomes the default orientation of your interior life rather than the exception. It was the practice that formed the quality of listening in the great figures of the tradition, not their doctrine and not their discipline in the performance sense of the word. The quality of attention to the divine presence that made them capable of hearing what was being said to them in forms that less attentive people missed entirely. Samuel heard the voice that Eli could not hear, not because Samuel was more spiritual than Eli, but because Samuel was in a posture of expecting to hear and had developed enough interior quietness to catch what Eli, with all his years of priestly service, had allowed the noise of the institution to override. The posture of expected receptivity is what the practice builds, and the posture changes what you are able to receive. The third practice is story reconstruction. Before I describe it, I want to give you something that positions the practice correctly, because the practice is not a memory exercise. It is not a gratitude journal in the conventional sense. It is a specific use of retrospective attention that produces a result that prospective attention cannot produce. The result is what I would call evidenced trust. Trust that is not just a decision of the will, but trust that is grounded in a documented pattern of accompaniment. The difference between these two kinds of trust is significant when the next difficult season arrives and the enemy tries to deploy the same strategy of silence and delay and apparent abandonment that was deployed in this season. Evidence trust can point to the record and say, "This is what happened the last time. This is the pattern. This is who God has been in the specific history of my specific life." The record is the answer to the doubt, and the record only exists if someone made it. The third practice is story reconstruction. Once a week, you will sit with the story of your season and read it backward, Not forward from where you started to where you are now. Backward from where you are now to where you started. Because the story reads differently in that direction. When you read the story forward, the sequence of events looks like a series of setbacks, interrupted occasionally by moments of encouragement. When you read the story backward, the sequence of events reveals a pattern of accompaniment that was invisible when you were inside it. The accompaniment was always there, but accompaniment in the middle of a difficult season does not feel like accompaniment. It feels like barely surviving. It feels like just getting through. It feels like holding on with the last available margin of endurance. Only in retrospect does the pattern of provision become visible. The door that opened exactly when another door closed. The person who arrived in your life at the specific moment when their arrival was the only thing that could have kept you moving forward. The resource that appeared when the resource was the exact thing that was needed to continue. The word that found you in the specific hour when the word was the one thing that could have stopped you from making a decision that would have taken you in a direction you could not have recovered from easily. Story reconstruction is the practice of looking backward and cataloging what the accompaniment looked like so that the pattern becomes legible. And when the pattern becomes legible, the trust is not just an act of will. It is grounded in the evidence of a God who has a demonstrated track record of showing up in your specific story in ways that were not visible in the moment, but are undeniable in retrospect. Take your journal if you have one, or take a blank page if you do not, and go back as far as you can in the story of your formation. Write down every instance you can locate where something arrived that should not have been there and was exactly what was needed. Write down every door that closed and then turned out to be a protection from something you could see only later. Write down every apparent setback that redirected you towards something better than the thing you had been asking for. Write it down in detail and then read what you have written, because what you will be reading is not just your history. You will be reading the profile of a God who has been safar over your life with an intentionality and a specificity that is extraordinary when you see it all at once, rather than one piece at a time. Before I show you the revelation that has been building since this message began, the revelation that explains what God saw in your test that was so unexpected, so profound, so counter to every calculation the enemy had made about what you would do under pressure, I need to give you something important to hold, because what is coming in the next revelation is going to require you to be grounded before you receive it, or it will feel too large and too good, and you will default to the familiar habit of protecting yourself from hope by qualifying the good thing before it has finished arriving. So hold this before we proceed. You are not approaching the end of this message as the same person who began it. What has been said over you in the last section has been working at a level below the conscious mind. The name of your test, the nature of what was being formed in you, the specific moment that moved heaven, the three practices that deepen what was formed. These are not just ideas, they are activations. And the activation that has been happening in you while you received this word is what makes you ready for what comes next. Not ready in a perfectly composed and fully confident way. Ready in the way that matters. Ready in the way that counts. The way of someone who has passed the test and who is now standing at the threshold of the release that the test was building toward. Before I show you the revelation that has been the destination of everything this message has been building toward, I need to do something that might feel like a pause in the narrative, but is actually the most important bridge in the entire message. I need to name plainly what you now know, not in spiritual language, not in the elevated register of the revelation we have been walking through, but in the simple and grounded language of what has been understood. Because the purchase decision I am going to ask you to consider in the next part of this message deserves to be made from a place of genuine clarity, not from emotional elevation. And the clarity requires that we step for just a moment into plain words. Here is what happened in the unseen realm during the most difficult moments of your season. Not what you felt was happening, not what the circumstances seemed to be producing. What was actually happening at the level of the transaction between heaven and earth that the visible world is a downstream consequence of. The ancient text describes something that human language struggles to hold without either sensationalizing it or domesticating it. There are things being prepared in the unseen realm that are not yet visible in the seen realm. There are promises that exist in completed form in heaven that are still in transit to earth. There are resources and connections and opportunities and open doors that have been designated with your name on them and that are moving through the layers between the unseen and the seen at a pace that is calibrated to the readiness of the one they are moving toward. When the ancient text uses language about things being prepared in advance, it is not speaking metaphorically. The preparation is real. The advancement is real. What you have been waiting for was not being withheld while you were in your season. It was being calibrated, adjusted to arrive at the version of you that exists right now on this side of the formation, rather than at the version of you that existed at the beginning of the season. The you who would have received it earlier was not ready for it in the form it was always intended to arrive. The you who is receiving this word today is ready. And the thing that was being calibrated is now aligned with the readiness of the person it was designated for. Think about what this means practically. The connection you have been hoping for was not absent. It was in preparation. The opportunity you have been asking for was not withheld. It was being formed. The door you have been standing in front of was not locked against you. It was being prepared for the version of you that could walk through it and sustain what was on the other side. The timing that has felt so frustrating was not indifferent. It was precise. And the precision of it is about to become visible in a way that will recontextualize the entire season you have been in. The pieces that looked like loss from the inside of the season will reveal themselves on the other side of it as the exact pieces that were needed to complete the picture that is now coming into view. This is not wishful thinking. This is the pattern of the biblical narrative from beginning to end. Joseph in the pit did not know what was being assembled while he was in the pit. He had the dream, but he did not have the blueprint. The dream was sufficient for the waiting. The blueprint arrived when the season was ready to deliver what the dream had promised. The waiting was not empty. The waiting was full of preparation happening at a level Joseph could not access while he was inside the waiting. And when the season turned, when Pharaoh had the dream that needed interpretation, the full assembly of everything that had been prepared during the formation of Joseph was ready to be deployed in a single moment that would have been impossible without every piece of the preparation that preceded it. That is the structure of what is coming for you. Not a gradual improvement on what was, a sudden and comprehensive release of what was being prepared throughout the entire season. A release that will make the season make sense in retrospect, in a way that it could never make sense during the season itself. The suddenness of what is coming is not arbitrary. It is the direct consequence of the specificity of the preparation. The longer the preparation, the larger the release. The depth of the formation corresponds to the height of the elevation, and the elevation, when it comes, will be in direct proportion to the depth of the character that was formed in you to sustain it. Here is what you now know that you did not know when this message began. Your season of difficulty was not a punishment, and it was not an accident. It was a specific formation process designed to build a character capable of sustaining a specific assignment. The formation was painful not because God is indifferent to your pain, but because the character that was being built could not have been built in comfort. The fire that felt destructive was actually refining. The silence that felt like abandonment was actually the focused attention of a God who was Tisaf, leaning in with the full weight of heaven, oriented toward one person in one season, watching for the evidence of what he already knew was there. Here is what you now have that you did not have when this message began. 3 practices that are not spiritual additions to a complicated schedule, but orientations that deepen what was formed in you during your season. The unwitnessed faithfulness practice trains the disposition that made your test significant. The designated silence practice creates the receptivity that allows what is coming to arrive before it is fully visible. The story reconstruction practice makes legible the pattern of accompaniment that has been present throughout your story, even when it was invisible from the inside. These are practical, they are specific. They have outputs you can identify and measure. You know what they are, and you know what to do with them. Here is who you now know you are. Someone who has been in a season of formation that was calibrated to the specific weight of an assignment that required it. Not someone who was falling behind. Not someone who was being overlooked. Someone who was being prepared for something that required the specific combination of patience, endurance, trust, and surrender without resolution that your season was designed to produce. The character that was formed in your season is not a consolation prize for the thing you did not receive. It is the actual prize. The character is what the assignment requires. And the assignment is now closer than it has ever been. That is plain. That is true. And that is what you carry out of the first part of this message, regardless of what the next section brings. Now, let me show you the thing that will astonish you about what God saw. There is a question that the entire architecture of this message has been building toward. Not what God thought of your faithfulness, not whether he was watching, not even what the test was designed to produce in you. The question that heaven was holding, the question that Sapphire was watching for the answer to with the most intense attention of the entire season, was this: what would you choose to lay down at the moment when the cost of laying it down was highest, and the reward for laying it down was invisible, and no one was watching you lay it down, and there was no guarantee that the laying down would produce anything at all? Because what God was watching for was not the evidence of your willingness to do hard things. He had already seen that across the entire length of your season. What he was watching for was something more specific and more revealing than endurance. He was watching for the evidence of something that is far rarer than faithfulness in the traditional sense. He was watching for the evidence that you were capable of surrendering not just the outcomes you wanted, but the expectation itself. The expectation of return, the expectation of recognition, the expectation of reward that is proportional to the investment. This is the difference between obedience and surrender. Obedience says, I will do what you ask, even when it costs me. Surrender says, I will release the accounting. I will stop tracking the cost and measuring it against the return. I will choose you and the right things and the faithful things, not because the ledger is being kept and will eventually balance, but simply because this is who I am, and this is what I choose, because of who you are. Not a transaction. An orientation. Not a sacrifice with a return calculation attached to it. A free giving of something precious with no invoice attached. The moment you made that choice, the moment that specific posture became real in you and not just performed, that is the moment that stunned heaven. Not because it was unexpected in the sense that God did not know it was possible, but because the specific form it took in your specific situation, in the specific combination of what you were asked to lay down and what you chose to release it for, produced something in the record of what you have become that could not have been produced any other way. The enemy, whose strategy had been targeted at your assignment from a long way out, had calculated that you would hold on. He had calculated that the investment was too large and the return too uncertain, and the season too long for you to reach the place of release with your hand open. He was wrong, and the wrongness of his calculation dismantled the specific strategy he had built around the assumption that you would remain gripped. There is a framework for understanding spiritual opposition that the ancient text offers that most modern teaching either ignores or misapplies. The framework is this: the intensity of the opposition directed at any particular person is in direct proportion to the significance of the assignment that person carries. This is not mysticism. This is the logic of strategic investment. A general does not deploy his most sophisticated and sustained strategy against a position that presents no strategic threat. The intensity of the attention, the sophistication of the pressure, the duration of the resistance, all of these are calibrated to the value of what is at stake. When the enemy invests significantly in a sustained multi-year strategy against a specific person, that investment is itself an indication of how significant the assignment that person carries is. Most people, when they are in a season of significant spiritual pressure, interpret the intensity of the pressure as evidence that they must have done something wrong, or that they are particularly weak, or that they have drifted into territory they were not meant to occupy. The exact opposite is frequently true. The intensity of the pressure is the enemy acknowledgement of the significance of the calling. He does not press hard where there is nothing to prevent. He presses hard where there is something in process that, if it is completed, will have consequences he cannot afford. The sustained, sophisticated, multi-layered strategy against your specific life was not evidence of your vulnerability. It was evidence of your value to the kingdom of what God is doing in your generation. When the enemy chose the specific instruments he chose to create pressure in your season, he was not choosing arbitrarily. He was choosing the instruments most likely to produce the specific kind of doubt that would be most effective against the specific kind of faith you carry. He knows what you believe in the places that are strongest in you, because the strongest places are the ones worth targeting. And the strategy he chose was aimed at exactly those places. The doubt about whether God was present, the doubt about whether the calling was real, the doubt about whether the waiting would ever produce anything. These were not random doubts. They were targeted precisely at the foundations of your specific faith architecture, and they nearly worked. I want to be direct with you about something. The enemy did not want you to receive this message today. Not this message specifically, but the category of word that this message belongs to. The category of word that names what was happening in your season in a way that reveals the victory rather than the cost. He had invested significantly in the framework through which you were interpreting your season. The framework of delay, the framework of punishment, the framework of God being stingy or slow or absent. Because that framework, applied consistently over the length of your season, would have produced a specific spiritual consequence that would have been far more effective than any external circumstance in dismantling your assignment. The consequence of a person of great calling who no longer trusts the God who called them. He nearly succeeded. You know this not because of what I am telling you, but because you remember the moments when the trust was closest to breaking, the nights when the doubt was not a passing shadow but a genuine question about whether any of this was real. The moments when the comparison between your circumstances and the circumstances of people who seemed to have no equivalent faithfulness was so stark that the fairness of the whole arrangement seemed genuinely questionable. The moments when the silence felt less like a season and more like a permanent condition. He nearly succeeded, but he did not succeed. And the reason he did not succeed is the same reason that you are here right now receiving this word. In the moments when the trust was closest to breaking, something chose to hold on. Not a manufactured strength, not a performance of faith. something underneath the doubt that was rooted more deeply than the doubt could reach. The root of your faith was deeper than the pressure that was applied to break it, and the root held. The root held in the night seasons, and the root held in the comparison moments, and the root held in the silence, and the root held in the surrender, and the root held even in the moments when you did not feel like the root was holding. The root held not because you were strong enough to hold it. The root held because it was rooted in something that does not change with seasons or surrender to pressure. I hear the voice of the Father over you in this moment, and I want to give it to you plainly. This is not poetry. This is not framing. This is what is being released over your life in this hour. I saw every night you stayed when you wanted to leave. I saw every morning you came back when the night before had made coming back feel like too much. I saw every moment of silence that cost you something. Every surrender that required you to release something you had been holding for a long time. I saw every choice you made in the hidden place when the hidden place was the only place you had, and when what was visible to me alone was the only audience you were performing for. I saw you refuse to let go of me in the seasons when letting go would have been the easier choice. And I want you to know that I was not absent during those seasons. I was closer to you in those seasons than I have been in any season of your life. What felt like my distance was actually my proximity in a form you did not recognize, because you were looking for the presence in the form of the comfort, and it was arriving in the form of the formation. I am not stingy with you. I am not slow on your behalf. What has felt like the withholding was the protecting. What has felt like the delay was the developing. What has felt like the silence was the shaping. And now the shaping is complete enough for what is being released to land safely in the version of you that has been formed by the season you have just walked through. You are not who you were when the season began. You are dokims. You are teleo. And the ram has been in the thicket the entire time. That is the Father speaking over you right now. That is what has been building in the unseen realm, while your circumstances in the seen realm have been slow to reflect what was already accomplished. And I need you to receive that, not analyze it, not qualify it, not immediately find the thing about it that feels too good to be true and protect yourself from it by reducing it to reasonable proportions. Receive it. Let it land in the places that have been tender for a long time. Let it find the specific wound of the specific doubt that has been the most persistent, and let it speak to that wound directly. Type I release in the comments right now, not as a performance of surrender, but as the acknowledgement of a surrender that has already happened and that now has a name and a witness and a testimony. You released it, and the release was seen. And what is coming because the release happened, and because the character that the release required has been fully formed in you over the length of this season. There is something I want to give you before we enter the final section of this message. Something that is not spiritual information, something practical and grounded in the real mechanics of how the kind of mind you carry operates and what it needs to be positioned for what is coming. Because the assignment that is coming requires a specific kind of cognitive capacity, not intelligence in the conventional sense, something more fundamental and more recoverable than intelligence. And I want to name what has been working against that capacity during your season, because naming it is the first step toward recovering it. During a season of prolonged stress and pressure, the brain does something that is physiologically well documented by the neuroscientists who study it. It shifts into a mode of operation that is optimized for survival rather than for flourishing. The parts of the brain that are responsible for creativity, for insight, for the kind of lateral thinking that connects seemingly unrelated things and produces solutions that are not visible from a linear perspective, those parts down-regulate when the system is under consistent pressure, not permanently, not irreversibly. but measurably and significantly. What happens neurologically in a sustained season of stress is that the brain begins to allocate its resources preferentially toward the systems that manage immediate threat rather than toward the systems that generate possibility. This is not a spiritual observation. This is the finding of researchers who have spent decades mapping the relationship between stress and cognitive function. It explains something that many people in seasons like the one you have been in describe. The feeling of operating below your own capability. The sense that your thinking is slower, less clear, less creative than it used to be. The experience of standing in front of a problem that you know you should be able to solve and feeling like the solution is behind a wall of fog that you cannot see through. That is not a character flaw. That is not a failure of faith. That is the predictable and documented neurological consequence of a sustained period of pressure applied to a system that was designed for more than survival mode. Before the end of this message, I am going to give you access to something that a small team of neuroscientists have been working on for 20 years. Something that addresses this specific pattern at the level of brain function. Something that can begin to restore the cognitive capacity that your season of pressure has been operating against. I will show you what they found and why the science behind it won the Nobel Prize. But for now, just hold the understanding that the fog you may have been experiencing is not permanent. It is not a sign of damage. It is a reversible condition that has a specific mechanism and a specific corrective. And the corrective is coming. Before we enter that final section, I want to plant one more seed in you from the revelation we have been walking through. Everything you have been through in your season was building towards something. The building is complete enough now for the something to be released. The character is formed. The test has been passed. The verdict has been sealed. And what is about to be placed in the hands of someone who is dokimos and teleio, and who has demonstrated in the crucible of surrender without resolution that they can be trusted with what is coming, is not a minor thing. It is not a modest upgrade on what your life looked like before your season began. What is coming is proportional to the depth of the preparation that preceded it. Stay with me until the very end of this message, because what I am about to declare over your life in the sacred closing is the reason this word was sent in your direction at this specific moment. And the tool I am about to show you is not incidental to what is coming. It is part of it. The preparation is not finished until you have access to what was prepared for the specific kind of mind that was formed in your season. And that access is moments away. There is a moment in every formation season that serves as the threshold between what was and what is coming. It is not always a dramatic moment. It is not always marked by obvious external change. Sometimes the threshold is so quiet that the person crossing it does not know they have crossed it until they look back and realize that something in the posture of their spirit has shifted without their permission and without their effort. The person who entered the conversation earlier in this message is not the same person who is receiving these words right now. Something has been working beneath the conscious level of what the words were saying. The activations that have been embedded in this word have been doing their work, and the work has produced a readiness that was not fully present at the beginning. I want to do something with you before we enter the final movement of this message. I want to give you a moment to take inventory of what is actually present in you right now compared to what was present when you first settled in to receive this word. Not a grand assessment, not a theological examination. A simple, honest attention to what is happening in the interior landscape of your life at this moment. Where is your chest right now compared to where it was at the beginning? Is there something that has softened? Is there something that has settled? Is there a tension that has released, that was gripping something at the beginning of this message, that is no longer gripping it with the same force? Is there an understanding that has arrived that was not present before? Not understanding as intellectual information, understanding as something that has changed the way you inhabit your own story. If any of those things are true, that is not incidental. That is the evidence of a word that has been doing something real, in a real person, in a real moment. The territory has changed. You are standing in a different place than the place you were standing when you pressed play. And the place you are standing now is where what I am about to give you was designed to be received. There are 4 identities that were formed in your season that I need to name for you before we close this message. Not because you do not already know them in some form, but because they need to be spoken aloud and received consciously before the declaration at the end of this message can do its full work. Because declarations that land on unrecognized identity produce encouragement. Declarations that land on recognized and received identity produce activation. And what is coming at the end of this message is not encouragement, it is activation. The first identity that was formed in your season is the identity of the spiritual warrior. Not the warrior in the sense of someone who is aggressive or confrontational, the warrior in the sense of someone who has learned to hold their position under pressure that would move most people. You have been in battles that did not come with a visible enemy or a clear end date. You have been in the kind of warfare that is most exhausting, not because of its intensity, but because of its duration. The pressure that does not peak and release but simply maintains, the kind of battle that wears people down not through any single dramatic blow, but through the accumulated weight of sustained resistance. And you have held your ground. The spiritual warrior does not fight from a place of strength that was produced in comfort. The spiritual warrior fights from a place of strength that was discovered in the most unlikely place, in the discovery that the thing they feared would break them did not break them, that the pressure they thought would be too much was not too much, that they were more durable than the story they had been telling about themselves. The season formed that discovery in you. The specific battles of your specific season revealed something about your capacity that you could not have known without going through what you went through. The warrior identity is not something you put on. It was revealed. It was there the whole time. The season brought it out into the light. The second identity is the identity of the cycle breaker. There are patterns in your family line, in your relational history, in the generational inheritance you received that were not destined to be permanent. Patterns of limitation, patterns of contraction, patterns of belief about what was possible and what was not, about who deserved what and who did not, about the ceiling above which people from your particular background and history and context were not supposed to rise. You felt those patterns pressing against you in your season. You felt them in the voices of doubt that were familiar because they sounded like voices you had heard before in your family of origin. You felt them in the reflexive expectation of failure that arrived every time you were close to a breakthrough. You felt them in the tiredness that set in at a specific threshold, the threshold just below where the limitation said the ceiling was. But you kept pressing, not in a way that required you to pretend the patterns were not there, in a way that required you to choose a different story than the one the patterns were narrating. Every time you chose trust over the inherited narrative of limitation, every time you chose faithfulness over the practiced posture of resignation, every time you refused to let the pattern have the final word about what your life was allowed to become, you were breaking a cycle. Not dramatically, not all at once. One private choice at a time, one refusal at a time, one act of faithfulness in the face of a pattern that said faithfulness does not produce anything. The cycle is not finished being broken in you, but the breakthrough is real, and it will run further through your line than you can currently see. The third identity is the identity of the hope restorer. People in your sphere of influence have been watching what your season has been doing to you with a specific kind of attention that you may not have been aware of. Not the people who heard about your difficulties from a distance, the people who were close enough to see you in the actual days, the ones who watched you get up and continue on mornings when anyone who knew what your night had been like would have understood if you had not gotten up, the ones who watched you choose kindness in the moments when bitterness would have been entirely justified, the ones who watched you maintain the orientation of your faith in the seasons when every indicator in your external life was pointing in the direction of abandoning it. They have been making a calculation about you, not a conscious or deliberate calculation, an unavoidable one. They have been measuring the durability of hope against the evidence of your season. If someone like you, with the level of difficulty you have walked through, with the specific combination of endurances and surrenders and private costs you have paid, if someone like you can still be found standing and still be found trusting, then something in the story about whether hope is reasonable becomes harder to dismiss. You have been a living argument for the possibility of hope in circumstances that seem designed to extinguish it. And that argument has been making an impact on people who did not have permission to hope until they watched what your season did not do to you. The fourth identity is the identity of the voice. In every generation, there are people who are given the capacity to articulate what others cannot articulate, not because the others do not feel it, because the feeling has not found language yet. The voice is the person whose formation in the specific experience of being chosen and tested and formed and found faithful gives them access to a register of language that cannot be accessed without going through what they went through. You know things now that you did not know before your season. Not intellectual things, experiential things, things that can only be taught by the season itself. And those things, when you speak them, will find the people who needed someone to say out loud what they have been carrying alone. The voice is not always public. Sometimes the voice speaks in a conversation between two people at a kitchen table that changes the direction of a life that would have gone in a different direction without what was said in that conversation. Sometimes the voice speaks in a letter that someone reads in a moment of crisis, and that becomes the thing they reach for when the crisis returns. Sometimes the voice is simply the presence of someone in a room that produces a quality of peace that the people in the room cannot explain but cannot deny. The voice does not require a stage. The voice requires that the person who carries it has been through enough to speak with the kind of authority that cannot be manufactured. Your season gave you that authority, and the authority is now ready to be used. Let me give you one more dimension of each identity before we seal them, because the naming deserves to be specific enough to be held. The spiritual warrior that you are is not a warrior in the mode of aggression or conquest. The warfare of the spiritual warrior is primarily interior. It is the warfare of maintaining the orientation of trust in the face of circumstances designed to disrupt it. Every morning you chose, trust was a battle won. Every time you kept your hand flat on the table in surrender without resolution was a strategic victory. Every time you refused to let the doubt have the last word was a position held. The battlefield was not external. It was the interior landscape of your own spirit, and you held that ground. The cycle breaker that you are carries in their body the specific burden that comes from choosing differently than the pattern says people like you choose. That choosing has a cost that people who have not carried the lineage of a specific pattern cannot fully understand. The cost of being misunderstood by the people in the line who chose the pattern and who interpret your different choosing as a rejection of them. The cost of loneliness that comes from standing at a fork in a road where the people you love took one path and you took another. The cost of not having a map for the path you are on because no one in your immediate history has been on this path before. You paid those costs, and the paying was the breaking, and the breaking will run further through your line than you can see from where you are standing. The hope restorer that you are carries a specific gift that only people who have been through the specific geography of your season carry. The gift of presence in what someone else carries darkness that does not rush to resolve the darkness or minimize it or explain it away. The gift of sitting in the dark with someone and not needing the dark to end before you can be present to them in it. You learned that gift by being in your own dark long enough to discover that it was survivable. That the God who was present in your dark is present in the darkness of everyone else too. And that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone in their dark is simply show them, by the quality of your presence, that the dark does not destroy the person who remains faithful in it. The voice that you are has been preparing to speak words that you did not yet have language for at the beginning of your season. The language was being formed while you thought you were simply surviving. The vocabulary of formation and surrender and trust in the silence and faithfulness without visible return. That vocabulary was being built in you through the experience of each of those things in turn. And the voice that speaks from that vocabulary speaks with an authority that borrowed language cannot produce. When you speak now, you will speak as someone who has been through something, not as someone who has studied something. The difference between those two kinds of speaking is the difference between information and testimony. And testimony is what the people in your sphere need from you, not information, testimony. These four identities, the spiritual warrior, the cycle breaker, the hope restorer, the voice, are not aspirational. They are not things you are trying to become. They are things you have become in the season you just walked through a process that was specifically designed to produce exactly them. They are who you are now. And what comes at the end of this message will seal them in a way that makes them permanently accessible to you when the pressure comes in a future season and the enemy tries to make you forget who you are. But before we enter that sacred space at the end, I need to give you what I promised early in this message. I told you that a small group of neuroscientists had found something about how the specific kind of mind that is formed in a season like yours operates and what it needs to be positioned for what is coming. And I told you that what they found won the Nobel Prize. Let me show you what they discovered, because the formation of your character in your season is not the only preparation that has been made for what is coming. There is also a preparation that has been made at the level of your neurology. And that preparation requires a specific kind of activation that I want to give you access to today. The science begins in 1981 with a researcher named Dr. Roger Sperry, a neuroscientist whose work on the left and right hemispheres of the human brain won the Nobel Prize in Medicine that year. What Dr. Sperry discovered, in years of meticulous research on patients whose hemispheres had been surgically separated to treat severe epilepsy, was something that had been present in every human brain, but that no one had previously understood with the clarity that his research produced. He discovered that the two hemispheres of the human brain are not simply redundant systems performing the same functions with different emphases. They are fundamentally different kinds of processes. The left hemisphere specializes in sequential, logical, language-based thinking. The right hemisphere specializes in spatial, intuitive, pattern recognition thinking. And these two radically different processing systems, when they are working together in what the researchers call whole brain activation, produce a quality of cognitive output that is categorically different from what either hemisphere can produce alone. Here is what the research found about whole brain activation in children. When researchers tested children between the ages of 3 and 7 for the specific markers of whole brain activation, what they found was that approximately 98% of those children showed the pattern. 98%. The hemispheres were communicating at a level that produced a quality of creative thinking, of flexible problem-solving, of intuitive knowing, combined with the capacity to articulate and act on that knowing, that the researchers described as creative genius by any standard definition of the term. The children were not exceptional. They were representative. Nearly every child that was tested showed the pattern. Then the researchers did something that produced a finding that changed the conversation entirely. They tested adults, and they found that less than 1 in 1,000 adults showed the same pattern of whole brain activation that 98% of children had shown. Less than 1 in 1,000. The same baseline capacity that was present in nearly every child was present in almost no adult. Something happened between childhood and adulthood that disrupted the communication between the hemispheres on a massive and consistent scale. The stress of modern education, which rewards left hemisphere processing and treats right hemisphere processing as a distraction. The pressure of a world that values productivity over creativity, certainty over intuition, performance over presence. The accumulated load of a life lived in survival mode rather than flourishing mode. The same neurological consequences of sustained pressure that I described to you a little while ago. All of it, layered over the years between childhood and adulthood, systematically dimming the connection between the two hemispheres until what was present in the child at the level of creative genius has been reduced to a barely audible signal beneath the noise of a brain that has learned to operate on the minimum required to survive. You remember what it was like to be that child, not as a memory of a specific event, as a body memory, as the faint recollection of a state of being in which thinking was lighter and faster and more connected. When a problem presented itself and the answer arrived not through a labored process of analysis, but through a kind of intuitive recognition that simply knew, when creativity was not effortful, but effortless. When learning was not a discipline, but a delight. When the world was full of connections that were easy to see and possibilities that were obvious and a sense of being alive in a way that the adult world has progressively made harder to access. You thought that state was something you outgrew, something that belonged to a version of you that is no longer available, something that was replaced by the competent, functional, responsible adult who knows how to get things done and manage the demands of a life with real obligations. You thought the gap between who you are now and who you were then was simply the gap between childhood and adulthood. The researchers found something different. They found that the gap is not developmental, it is not inevitable, it is neurological. And because it is neurological, it is, in significant measure, addressable. A woman reached out to a member of the research team sometime after learning about this work. She had grown up in a family that held a specific belief about its history. Her mother had told her, with the kind of certainty that only comes from a story that has been repeated for generations, that their family had bad luck, that there was something in their lineage that meant things were always going to be harder for them than for other people. Her father had given 22 years of his life to a company in genuine and sacrificial service, and the week he was finally promoted, the company closed. The family interpreted this as evidence of the pattern. The bad luck was real. The ceiling was real. And the ceiling meant that significant cognitive breakthrough and significant life breakthrough were simply not in the cards for people from their particular story. After 2 weeks of using the tool this research team had developed, she reached out to describe what had happened. A romance that had been absent from her marriage for a long time had returned. An insight she had during a meeting at work solved a problem that had been resisting solution for months. She was promoted. And she had this to say about the family narrative that had governed her and her family for as long as she could remember. "The curse," she said, "is gone." She had stopped believing in the bad luck, not because someone told her the bad luck was not real, but because she discovered in her own direct experience that the ceiling that she had accepted as given was not structural. It was a consequence of a specific neurological pattern that had been addressed, and the addressing of the pattern had changed the way she inhabited her own life at every level. That story is not unique to her. The research team has collected accounts from people whose experience with what they built has produced changes that they describe with the same language she used. The word they reach for most often is magical, not in the sense of superstition, in the sense of something becoming possible that they had genuinely stopped believing was possible for them. The team was led by a neurologist in New York City named Dr. Daniel Barone, who spent more than 2 decades translating the findings of the Nobel Prize research into something that could be delivered in a form that did not require a clinical setting and did not require an investment of thousands of dollars in equipment. What Dr. Barone and his team produced is an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence that uses what they call neural sync technology to stimulate the specific communication pathways between the left and right hemispheres that the research found were underactive in the adult brain. Not a brainwave, not a meditation technique, not a supplement or a pill or a device that requires ongoing maintenance. A specific 8-minute audio sequence delivered through ordinary headphones that the research found to be consistent in producing the patterns of whole brain activation in adult subjects that had previously been assumed to be the exclusive domain of childhood. It is called the genius switch, not because genius is what it claims to produce, because the switch that was present in you as a child, the neurological switch between the 2 modes of processing that produced the creative capacity your brain had access to before the years of stress and pressure and survival mode dimmed it. That switch can be engaged again, not by effort, not by discipline, not by adding another practice to an already demanding schedule, by giving your brain 8 minutes a day of a targeted auditory stimulus that does what your brain used to do on its own before the world taught it not to. The person reading this, who has been trying brainwave tracks on the streaming platforms and has not found the result they were looking for, needs to hear this specifically. Dr. Barone and his team spent significant time analyzing what was available on those platforms. And what they found was that the vast majority of what is labeled as brain enhancement audio on the streaming services has no neural sync technology embedded in it at all. The labeling exists because the labels attract listeners. The technology was not present in what was labeled. The actual sequence took years of development and clinical testing to produce. It is only available through the direct page of Dr. Barone and his team. Not because they are protecting a commercial interest, because the thing that makes the sequence work is a specific proprietary arrangement that cannot be replicated by someone who does not understand the precise mechanics of what the sequence is doing. The version on the streaming service is a label without the substance. The actual genius switch is a different thing entirely. If you have stayed with this message through everything we have walked through together, and something in you is resonating with what I am saying about the neurological dimension of your preparation, the link is in the description below this video and in the pinned comment. You will find it there when you look for it. Dr. Barone made it available at the lowest price his team could offer, while still maintaining the quality of what they built. The access price is not $100. It is not the $500 that his colleagues originally suggested would be fair for what the research produces. It is $39 for the sequence plus 4 additional resources that his team prepared to support the work it does. a guided visualization from one of the most respected voices in that space, a practical guide to the foods that work against the pattern of whole brain activation so you can make changes in your daily life that support what the audio is doing. A foundational text that underlies every serious manifestation and intention-setting practice, more than 100 years old and available for free as part of what you receive. And a practical visual guide to the 5 habits that the research found most supportive of sustaining the capacity that the genius switch activates. If the price is a question in your mind, let me put it in a frame that addresses the question directly. An in-office neurofeedback session with a specialist costs approximately $300 per hour. A home neurofeedback device capable of producing the kind of hemispherical stimulation we have been discussing costs in the range of $7,000. Dr. Barone developed what he developed specifically so that access to what the Nobel Prize research made possible would not require a specialist and would not require a machine. $39 is not the price of the research. It is the price of the access. And if it does not produce what he says it produces in your specific experience, you get every cent of it back. Not after a week of use, not after a limited trial. You can use the sequence 80 times, and if you do not find that it produces any measurable change in the way your brain is working and in the way your life is unfolding as a result, you get every cent back. The guarantee is ironclad because the team is that confident in what the sequence does. One more thing before we leave this section. The price at which this is currently available will not remain at $39 indefinitely. The access is being offered at this price, specifically for those who receive it through this message, and the price will increase. I do not know when. But the guarantee of $39 is not a guarantee that extends into the indefinite future. If the Spirit moves you to look into this, move when the Spirit moves you. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment below this message. That is where Dr. Barone and his team made this available. Only there, not on the streaming services, not in any other location. There and nowhere else. Now, close your eyes for a moment. I want to do something with you before we enter the sacred closing that belongs to this message. Not information, not teaching. Something different. A moment of alignment between what your mind has received and what your spirit already knows. In your mind, I want you to see yourself standing, not in the room where you are physically, in a different space. An open space with good light. And in this space, you are standing with both hands open at your sides, not reaching, not grasping, open, palms facing upward. The posture of someone who has released what they were gripping and who is available to receive what is coming without gripping that either. Notice how it feels to stand in that posture. Notice what changes in your chest when you visualize yourself standing that way. There may be a lightness there that was not there before, or a sense of being seen in the openness that feels vulnerable and safe at the same time, or a quiet that arrives in the space that the released grip has vacated. That quiet, that specific quality of interior silence that comes when the hand is finally open, is not emptiness, it is readiness. The space that the release created is not a void, it is a vessel, and a vessel is what is needed for what is about to be released over your life. Stay in that image for a moment longer. In that open space, with good light, hands open, you are not alone. The presence that has been Sappho over your entire season, that has been leaning in over every private choice and every hidden surrender and every unwitnessed act of faithfulness, that presence is in the space with you, not at a distance. Near, the way a father who has been watching his child from the other side of a long trial is finally able to be close, in a way that does not need to maintain the watchful distance of the formation season, near in the way of completion, near in the way of what follows after the test, near in the way of a God who has been waiting for this moment as long as you have. That presence is not leaving this space with you as a concept. It is going with you as a reality. And what is released over your life in the next few minutes of this message is being released into the hands you are holding open. Let what just arrived in that visualization settle into your body before we enter the closing. Take one breath, slowly, not as a technique, as the physical acknowledgement of a spirit that has been carrying a weight that is now lighter than it was when you began. There is a practice that the ancient teachers called the sacred closing, not a prayer in the conventional sense of a list of requests directed upward, not a performance of spiritual language designed to produce an emotional response in the people who heard it, a ceremony, a specific and intentional movement of the spirit from the receiving mode of the teaching to the releasing mode of the declaration, a moment in which what has been received is sealed in the spirit of the one who received it, so that the enemy, whose specific interest is in preventing the word from producing what it was sent to produce, cannot reach in and extract what was planted before it has taken root. This sacred closing belongs to you, not to the people around you, not to a general audience, to the specific version of you who has walked through what you have walked through and who is standing right now on this side of the revelation with hands open and weight lifted and character confirmed. What I am about to speak over your life is not poetry and it is not aspiration. It is declaration, grounded in evidence, grounded in what was witnessed in your season by the God who was Tsafa over every moment of it. What I am declaring was true before I said it. I am simply giving it language so that your spirit can receive it in a form your conscious mind can hold. Father, we come to this closing moment with gratitude that does not require words to be real, but that wants to find words, because the reality of what has been done is too large to carry in silence. We come with the gratitude of people who have just been shown something about our own season that we could not see when we were inside it. The gratitude of people who misread the prison as punishment and who are receiving in this moment the understanding that the prison was the preparation. The gratitude of people who have been standing in places that felt like ends and who are discovering in this moment that they were thresholds, not endings. Openings, doors that look like walls from the outside, but that open inward when the right key is applied. We do not come with gratitude for what has been easy, because your people gathered here have not been walking through an easy season. We come with gratitude for what has been faithful, for a God who did not depart from the prison, who was Tsafa in the pit, and Tsafa in the cell, and Tsafa in the midnight hours, and Tsafa in the mornings, when the will to continue was the smallest it had ever been. We come with gratitude for a God who designed the formation, knowing that the one being formed would not be able to see what was being formed while the forming was happening. For a God who trusted that the character he was building would be strong enough to endure the building process without being shown the blueprints. For a God who was so certain of what his formation would produce, that he began releasing what was coming before the formation was fully visible to anyone in the seen world. We come with gratitude for the test, not because it was easy to receive, but because what it produced is the most valuable thing that any season of our lives has produced. The character that was formed in the fire is worth more than any outcome that the fire was testing. The gold is worth more than what it costs the gold to become gold. And the person standing on the other side of this season is worth more than what the person who entered the season was worth, not in the economy of performance and achievement and earned status, but in the economy of formed character and proven faithfulness and demonstrated trustworthiness that makes a person genuinely ready to steward what they have been designated to receive. We receive that gratitude now, not as a theological position, but as a lived reality. Something in our chest is different than it was at the beginning of this message. Something has settled that was agitated. Something has released that was gripping. Something has arrived that was absent. That is not information, that is transformation. And the gratitude we carry is the first evidence of the transformation. There is something I want to do between the gratitude and the release that is specific to what your season required of you. Because gratitude and release are two movements that feel related, but that actually require separate attention if the release is going to be complete. The gratitude acknowledges what was. The release allows what was to transition into what is. And the transition requires that something specific is named and surrendered before the new thing can fully occupy the space that was held by what is being released. What I want to name is the expectation of owing. The expectation that because you walked through what you walked through with the faithfulness that you brought to the walking, something is owed to you, not in a calculating or demanding way, in the quieter and more persistent way that faithfulness sometimes produces a kind of internal accounting, an awareness of the investment that was made and a corresponding expectation that the investment will be repaid. The expectation is not wrong in its observation. The investment was real. The faithfulness was costly. The cost deserves to be acknowledged. But the expectation of specific repayment in specific form on a specific timeline is something that needs to be released for the freedom that this message is pointing toward to be fully received. Because what is coming is not a repayment in the economy of fairness. It is a release in the economy of grace. And grace does not operate on the logic of fairness. It operates on the logic of abundance. The provision coming toward you is not proportional to what you invested. It is disproportionate. It is more. The ram in the thicket was more than what was requested. The 11th hour worker received the same wage as the one who worked from the beginning. The return of the prodigal produced not adequate restoration, but extraordinary celebration. God does not pay debts. He lavishes gifts, and the receiving of a gift is different from the receiving of a payment. A payment requires that you track what you were owed and verify that the amount is correct. A gift requires that you open your hands and receive what is given without the filter of whether it was earned. Release the accounting, release the ledger, release the internal record of what was invested and what is owed, not because the record is inaccurate, but because holding the record prevents the hands from being fully open, and the fully open hand is the only hand that can receive the gift that is coming. The gift is real. The release of the accounting is the prerequisite for receiving it fully. And the receiving of it fully is the fullness of what this season has been building toward. Now, the release. There are things that were carried into this message that do not need to be carried out of it, not because they were trivial, because they have served their purpose, because what they were in service of, the formation of the character that was being built, is complete enough now for the things that were instruments of the formation to be released without loss. Because the releasing of what was carried is not the abandonment of what was formed. What was formed is staying. Only the weight of carrying what is finished needs to go. Chosen one, release the story that your season was evidence of your unworthiness. You are allowed to stop believing that the difficulty of your season was proportional to the distance of God from your life. You are allowed to stop using the length of the weight as evidence that you were forgotten. You are allowed to release that story. It was not true, and the proof of its untruth is in what was built in you by the very season you were using as evidence for it. The formation proves the presence. The testing proves the selection. The refining proves the value of what was being refined. Release the story that the fire was rejection. Release the comparison. You are allowed to stop measuring your timeline against the timeline of someone who is not you and not your assignment. You are allowed to stop looking at the visible progress of people whose story is not your story and whose formation is not your formation, and using what you see as evidence of something deficient in your own trajectory. The comparison was always false because the categories were never the same. Release the measuring stick that was never designed to measure what you are. You are allowed to release it without guilt and without the fear that the releasing of the comparison will produce a pride that replaces it. The releasing of the false measuring stick produces not pride but rest. Rest in the knowledge that your life was never being evaluated by the metric of what someone else carries timeline. Release the need to know how this ends before you take the next step. You are allowed to move forward with the specific clarity you have, rather than the comprehensive clarity you wish you had. You are allowed to trust the pattern of accompaniment that the story reconstruction practice will make legible in your specific history. You are allowed to release the paralysis that comes from requiring the full picture before beginning to walk. The full picture is not a prerequisite for faithfulness. Faithfulness in the direction of the next right thing, done with the character that has been formed and the trust that has been confirmed, is sufficient for the next step. And the next step will reveal the step after it. And the step after it will reveal the step after that. Release the need to see the whole staircase before putting your foot on the first step. Release the identity that your season tried to assign to you. The identity of the delayed, the identity of the overlooked, the identity of the person who was almost chosen but not quite. The identity that the enemy spent considerable effort constructing out of the specific materials of your specific circumstances. That identity was always a lie, but it was a lie that had enough texture to feel like truth, because it was assembled from the true pieces of your experience and arranged into a false narrative. The true pieces were real. The interpretation of what the pieces meant was fabricated. Release the interpretation. The season was not evidence of rejection. The season was evidence of selection at a level that required the formation only that specific kind of season could produce. You are allowed to walk out of this space carrying something different than what you carried in, not something borrowed from this message. Something that was already yours, that belongs to the deepest and most real version of who you are, and that has simply been confirmed and named and given language today so that you can hold it consciously. What you are carrying out is not a new identity. It is the true one, finally made legible, finally given its actual name. Before the declaration arrives, I want to give you one final frame for receiving it. Because declarations that land well are declarations that are received into a space that has been cleared for them. The clearing that happened in the release section of this closing, the release of the story of unworthiness, the release of the comparison, the release of the need for certainty before movement, the release of the internal accounting of what is owed, all of that clearing was for a purpose. It was clearing the specific space in your spirit where what I am about to declare needs to land, not on the surface, not in the part of you that evaluates ideas and decides whether to accept them, in the part of you that inhabits truth rather than analyzing it. The bone level, the level that makes decisions in the middle of the night when the rational mind has gone quiet, and what is left is the distillation of what you actually believe. The ancient practice of declaration in the Hebrew tradition was not the expression of what was already present, it was the calling forth of what was designated but not yet fully manifest. When the prophet spoke to the dry bones in the valley of Ezekiel, the bones were not animate. The word was not describing what was. The word was the mechanism by which what was designated became what was. The declaration was not wishful thinking. It was the specific tool by which the gap between what existed in the unseen realm and what existed in the seen realm was closed. The speaking was not secondary to the reality. The speaking was how the reality moved from the unseen to the seen. When I declare your identities over you in the next moment, I am using the same mechanism, not metaphorically. In the actual operating logic of how the word functions, when it is spoken by someone who has the authority of testimony behind their speaking, into the life of someone who has been formed to receive it. The declaration is the tool of the transfer. What has been true in the court of heaven since the verdict was sealed in your season is about to be spoken into the seen realm of your conscious identity. And the speaking is what makes it fully available to you as a possessed reality rather than a received idea. Now, the declaration. You are the spiritual warrior, not the warrior who has never been knocked down. The warrior who has been knocked down and who has a practice formed in the specific crucible of this specific season of getting back up. The warrior whose strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to be vulnerable and to continue. The warrior who has learned that holding the ground in the invisible battle is the most significant form of warfare that exists, and who has been doing exactly that for longer than anyone but the God who was watching has known. You are the spiritual warrior. You have been the spiritual warrior. The season confirmed it. Heaven witnessed it. The verdict has been sealed. You are the cycle breaker, the one who stands in a long line of people who were formed under the same patterns of limitation and inherited constraint, and who chose, at a cost that no one fully saw, to let the line stop at them. Not through anger or rejection of where they came from, through the patient and faithful and sometimes agonizing work of choosing differently, one private moment at a time, than the pattern said the people in this line choose. The cycle is not completely finished. Cycles rarely finish in a single generation, but the crack in the foundation of the limitation is your doing. And the crack will widen in the generations that come after you, and those generations will know, because you will tell them, that someone in the line chose differently so that they would not be required to carry what you were required to release. You are the hope restorer. The people who have been watching your season, who have been measuring the durability of hope against the evidence of what you have been walking through, those people received something from your faithfulness that they could not have received any other way. Hope was proven in your life to be more durable than the circumstances that were designed to extinguish it. And that proof is now available to everyone who was watching. You have already been doing this work without knowing you were doing it. The identity is not aspirational. It is already your history. You are the voice. The formation of your season has given you access to a register of truth that cannot be accessed without going through what you went through. What you speak now, whether publicly or privately, whether to large groups or in quiet conversations between two people, carries the weight of a testimony that is real, not performed, not assembled from borrowed language, your own, earned at the specific price of your specific season. The voice is not always the loudest in the room, but the voice is the one that people remember, the one that arrives in the right moment with the right word and changes the direction of a life that would have gone in a different direction without it. You are the voice. The formation gave you the voice. Now go and use it. Let these identities not sit in your head as information. Let them descend past the thinking mind, into the chest, into the place that makes decisions before the thinking mind catches up, into the part of you that will remember these words in the night seasons when the enemy tries to reintroduce the old narrative. Let them settle into the bone, into the cellular memory of who you are, not aspirations. Realities. You are dokimos. You are teleio. You are the spiritual warrior, the cycle breaker, the hope restorer, the voice. You have been selected, prepared, tested, confirmed. and now released. And so it is. Do not close this yet. Sit in the silence for a moment. There is something in the frequency of what was just spoken that is still working. Your job right now is not to analyze it or evaluate whether it landed correctly or wonder what to do with it. Your job is to let it be. 60 seconds of simply existing in what was just released over you. Let the silence carry what the words prepared. You are not alone in what you have just received. Right now, in cities and houses and apartments and rooms, lit by the same screens that are carrying this word to you, there are people who received what you received. People who were in the same dark, who had the same questions, who made the same private choices, in the same unwitnessed moments, who passed the same test in their own specific version of the same crucible, and who are standing right now on the same threshold you are standing on, with the same open hands, receiving the same verdict, sealed by the same God who was leaning forward over all of them in the same posture of Tisafar. You are not alone. And the community of people who are coming out of the formation at the same time you are coming out of it are going to find each other. Not through a program or a platform or a manufactured network. Through the recognition that happens when two people who have walked through the same kind of wilderness meet and recognize in each other the specific markings of someone who has been through what they have been through. The community is forming. The community is already partially formed, and you are part of it. If this message landed in a place that changed something, if what was spoken here found something that needed to be found and released something that needed to be released, let your like be your amen without words. Not for a number, not for an algorithm. As the simple physical agreement of a person who has received something real and is acknowledging that the receiving happened, gently press it. Let it be the seal on what was opened in this hour. And if you are going to continue moving forward in the territory this message opened, to stay connected. There are more words being prepared for the next season of what is coming for people like you. What was planted here is not the end of the planting. It is the beginning of a season of word that is calibrated to where you are now, rather than where you were when your formation season began. Stay connected. The next word will find you in the place you are actually standing, rather than the place you were standing when the difficult season was still fully underway. Type "I am chosen" in the comments right now, with the full weight of what that means. Not as a declaration of pride, as a declaration of accountability. As the acknowledgement that the designation comes with the responsibility of walking out what the designation requires. You are chosen. That is not a compliment. That is an assignment. And the assignment requires that the one who carries it knows who they are and holds that knowledge with both the humility of someone who knows they did not earn the selection and the confidence of someone who knows that the one who selected them does not make mistakes. For those who felt the resonance of what was shared about the neuroscientific dimension of your preparation, the path that Dr. Barone and his team built is still available to you. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. The genius switch is not the whole of what is coming for you, but it is part of it. The preparation was not only spiritual. The God who made the brain that was formed in your season also made provision for the restoration of the neurological dimension of what the season has been operating against. 8 minutes a day. Headphones. Eyes closed. The rest is what it does. Go look into it. If the spirit is still calling you toward it, the door is open. There is someone in your life who watched your season from close enough to see what it was actually costing you, and who has not yet found the language for what they themselves have been carrying. Someone unusually quiet lately. Someone who has been pulling back from the people around them in a way that might look like withdrawal, but that is actually the beginning of the same kind of formation you have been walking through. Someone who looks functional from the outside, but who you know is carrying something they have not put down and do not know how to put down. Someone who needs to know that what they are going through has a name and a purpose and a God who is leaning in over them with the same intensity with which he leaned in over you. Send this to that person, not as a suggestion, as an act of faithfulness that is itself the unwitnessed kind. You do not know exactly what it will do in them, but you know what it did in you. And the faith that produced the sending is already a seed that goes into the ground before the harvest is visible. This is not a video. This is not content. This is not information dressed in the language of spiritual encouragement. This is a word that was sent specifically for the version of you that would receive it in the specific moment. This moment represents in your specific story. You were not here by accident. You did not find this by scrolling. Something that knows you better than you know yourself arranged the timing, and the arrangement was not for your information. It was for your transformation. You are not leaving a message. You are leaving a season. The person who entered this space at the beginning carried the weight of a formation season that had not yet been named for what it was. The person leaving this space carries the knowledge of what was produced by that season, confirmed by the God who was watching every moment of it, and released into the assignment that the season was building toward. That is not a small transition. That is the threshold that the entire season was preparing you to cross. You have crossed it. Walk forward in the knowledge of who you are. The God who selected you is still with you. The character that was formed in you is still in you. And what is coming for you is worthy of everything the season cost you to become the person